Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today's Wednesday. It is June the 11th, and democracy is under assault, so saith, I think, wannabe presidential candidate Gavin Newsome. Get the impression that he's interested in a 2028 run, and he thinks that this is his moment. I think that the American people are saying otherwise. We've got some interesting stories going on. I'm going to start off with something that was an opinion piece written yesterday in the Washington Post. Always interesting when some legacy media outlet decides to call out legacy media outlets for the performance that legacy media outlets are known for, kind of lying and misrepresenting things. I want to make an analogy today that the protests that you're seeing and the violence that goes along with them in increasing numbers of American cities is more like the bot presence that you see on social media than it is like organic free speech turned into actionable violence. So we're going to say that. We've got some Karen Bass / communist versus communist action and some clips of people disagreeing with themselves in short order. For whatever reason, it continues to baffle me, but it seems like there are a bunch of these public figures that don't realize that the internet, it's not just forever, the internet. It's just for like this week. You can actually find disagreements in people's statements this week against themselves. We're going to do some of that and some fun things from Nancy Pelosi, who may or may not be completely hammered when she mentions that, how do you know it's not just a moment of exuberance that people are burning cars in the streets? That's what I usually do. When I'm most excited, I try to go burn my friends' cars. I think everyone likes fire, Ranger TV. Let's turn it on. What would be more fun than something that actually has value that's burning? So that's what they're going to go for. So we're going to get into a bunch of interesting things along that. Also, I do think that the stuff we're seeing, although I think it's inorganic in this country, there is an organic version of actual angry violence. And we might be seeing some of that over in Ireland right now. So I'm going to end with some thoughts about where this could go if the fake and the sort of AstroTurf version of what we're seeing were to become a real brush fire and start burning the ground around us. So that's where we'll go with that. And then a couple other little fun things as well. Before we get too deep into the weeds here, let's go ahead and say thanks to the folks over at Silent. You guys probably may have seen on the way in that I have my phone sitting in the bag. I just closed it up inside my Faraday case, so we do not get any phone calls. I'm constantly doing stuff just before we get started, and I always lock it in there before we get going. If you ever want peace and quiet, you can actually check out my friends over at Silent. It's a good name. Initially, it kind of escaped me. I went like, why Silent? Yeah, you can silence your devices. It's kind of nice. So whether it's big tech or whether it's government, whether it's corporate America or criminals, whether it's just family members or members of the media that want to get information from you at all times, like in my case, your privacy, your ability to have some peace in your home could constantly be compromised. And if you guys want to protect yourself from annoyances and even criminals, you can do so with my friends over at Silent and their Faraday products. What is a Faraday product? It is a mesh wire system that blocks all radio frequencies. And why might you need that? Because your phones, your tablets, your laptops, anything that you have that's electronic that is able to connect to any network is constantly sending out pings looking for those networks. And if that network that it receives just happens to be a nefarious actor, somebody can not only hack, but they can access all of your things. They can compromise your device. They can put like malware on there. They can do all kinds of crazy things that you may not want. So if you want to make your devices invisible and safe from the outside world, you can check out the backpacks. We have one sitting behind me right now that I use when I travel. We have the phone sleeves, which gives me peace and quiet during the show. I've got the dry bags, which I use when I go swim because I don't want anyone to know where I am. Then I want to be off the grid. The patented signal blocking technology will block all wireless signals, and it gives you peace of mind. So your data is not streaming out into the wrong hands. Your device is not locatable by anybody. This is a thing that you might want to use when you're, I don't know, meeting with clandestine sources, or maybe you just don't want to be bothered. When you want to go for a walk in the woods and not have to worry about the phone ringing or activating your Apple Watch. Go silent today at slnt.com/KYLE. You'll save 15% on qualifying orders. You'll get free shipping. You can stay ahead and conserve your privacy. Again, it's slnt.com/KYLE. And that's silent in nature and disconnecting from things. That is one of the 3 pillars they have. It's kind of like your mental health end of it. Do not discount that, folks. We are constantly being bombarded by information. And the only way you can know that it's not going to bother you is knowing that your phone's not going to go off because it's in a bag that is going to keep it from doing so. Again, slnt.com/KYLE. Let's get into today's program right now. And so we're going to lead off with a thing that seems kind of fun. Did the legacy media fail in its Biden coverage? Why look forward to a Gavin Newsom when you can look backwards to this decrepit old man who's standing there? This is a great picture, by the way. There's Jake Tapper and I think Dana Bash sitting at the tables. Joe Biden standing like right at their faces with a little well-lit glass table and the word presidential debate. This was the downfall of Joe Biden. But I found this article to be quite interesting. It was written by a person named Eric Wemple. I know nothing about him at all. It says, what did big-time players have to say about missing the story of the former president's decline? I do think that story, although we're kind of like beating it to death over on the right, it's not over in so much as it continues to give us lessons about what the left is and what the left is not and what they are able to do and whether or not they can even sort of like accurately self-assess their failure. Recent interview with XM host Megyn Kelly, CNN host Jake Tapper. Is there anything more masturbatorial than people who are media hosts interviewing other media hosts specifically about their media host experience? It's really bad. Called for a reckoning over the coverage of former President Joe Biden's age. There should be a lot of soul searching, said Jake Tapper. Not just among me. Not just among me. That's a really weird way of saying that. But among the legacy media to begin with, all of us, for how this was covered and not covered sufficiently. Few souls are going to undergo a pat down. I asked 17 news outlets, so this is the writer saying that, 17 different news outlets that were at the forefront of White House coverage, whether they believed that they had failed in any aspect of their coverage of Joe Biden's age. And the answer was, they do not. They do not think they failed. Americans think they failed. The voting booths proved that overwhelmingly. This was a gimmicky exercise in accountability journalism. It arrives as the debate over Biden's age coverage itself is already aging. The airwaves crested with commentary on the topic that released in the report. This actually all should have been adjudicated in February 2024. I think Wemple's correct when he points this out. This is when the special counsel, Robert K. Hur, came forward and said, we'd love to charge Joe Biden for the things that he did, but he's too old and he's too feeble. And nobody would want to look at him and say, this old, broken carcass should be going to jail or should be have any sort of accountability because he just doesn't even know when his son died anymore. But they covered for it. That's quite interesting. You've got this person. Who is this? This is Alex Thompson, who writes for Axios, was part of the new book that Tapper put out, said President Joe Biden's age and decline and its cover-up by the people around him is just a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. It's a good reminder for you guys to remember that Donald Trump White House could be, in fact, deceiving you. I think that's what they wanted you to take away from it. What I took away from it is there is no self-reflection. There's no sense of honesty. There's no ability to look inward and say, hey, are we the problem? Have we picked the wrong side of this? Are we now siding with people that have nothing to do with the folks that we serve? I think a lot of media have forgotten who their audience is and what their audience is. And if you're an American media company, your audience is primarily Americans, people who make a paycheck, people who pay their taxes, people who might go out and buy the products. You know, these people think that the end is, in fact, what they do. Like, my job is to say things that I believe are true. No. You say things that are true in order to attract eyeballs so that the people who pay you can make money on that attention span, right? That's the model of a podcast. That's what I do here. It's the model of what radio has done for many years, 100 plus years. It's what television does. It's what print advertising does. Everybody needs to understand that the content, although that is the primary reason people come there, it is the secondary part of the actual business model. There's very few people that are operating as like nonprofit journalists. And we actually have some of those people, theoretically, the NPRs, the PBSs. Does anyone have any faith in them? No, they actually suckle at the place where they get paid, which is the government. So they are out there working something else. It's always interesting to see, and I've got a good story from them too, don't worry. It's interesting to see that these people have lost sight of what their actual job is. Somebody was telling me this from the advertising field, that early on in a radio career, and it may have been my father, and it may have been somebody that I talked to that sells advertising and radio, but the purpose of these broadcasts are to give useful information in the meantime that is between the business model of the actual agencies. It's to sell advertising. These people have forgotten about that. And the only way that you sell advertising and the only way that you actually bring people to a product is when I think that you're a fundamentally honest actor, that you actually have scruples in who you're going to take money from. And then you come forward and you say, okay, so here's a bunch of information. We believe this stuff is true. We have all this evidence. We do good work, and you know that. And also, we've now sold your attention span to this company who we also do good work and we think is a useful or valuable update to your life. That's what's behind me right there. These are the products that I endorse. I'm really cautious about it. Like I said, I said on the program, people actually reach out to me right away. They go, hey, who was trying to sell $130 pants? It doesn't matter who it was. It's just not a company that I would align myself with because I don't spend $130 on pants that are made in Bangladesh. That's just not my jam. I do like to talk about things that I think are true. I'm going to bring you up something that's kind of like a hard truth. This is coming from ABC. This is actually coming from NPR, covering a now former ABC correspondent, quote unquote veteran correspondent. That means he was there for a while. This is a really awkward picture of this poor guy. This is Terry Moran, and he was on a sit down with Donald Trump. He did an interview, right? ABC News has dropped this guy because he made the mistake of dropping the veil, that pretense of being a non-biased person. We all know they're biased. If we're all being honest, I'm biased, you're biased, we all carry bias, implicit or otherwise. Some of it is explicit bias. If we're honest operators, we acknowledge what that bias is. We say what skin we have in the game. You know that it's a paid advertisement or not. And then we can all operate where everybody understands what the rules of the game are. Terry did the fundamental sin that people do in the FBI that me and my buddies were removed for. He embarrassed the organization, not because he said things that weren't true. I'm fairly confident the things he said were his actual beliefs. It's just that he let that slip, and it's not professional. And so he was removed after social media posts that he himself deleted. I'm very nuanced on this. I don't think it's a great look for the White House to go out and complain to an organization like ABC, like, should you remove this person? I think that they could call it out and say, we love seeing this. You love to see it. Terry Moran, we've given the honor of interviewing the sitting president, which not everybody gets to do. Certainly, it's a very, very small number of people who do. He decided to take to social media and complain about that same person who gave him that big interview and say that he's a world-class hater. That would be fine. But to say, like, what are you going to do about it? You guys have someone who's dishonest in your ranks. It reminds me of this. The legacy media failed in their coverage of Joe Biden because they're all being dishonest. And most of them are trying to accurately or inaccurately represent themselves as being this sort of like nonpartisan, spitting only truth. There's no opinion here. Remember Bill O'Reilly, who was like one of the most opinion journalist type guys there is? And he had the no spin zone, but everything he did was a spin, which was made fun of by a guy named Stephen Colbert. That was actually Colbert's best work. But Stephen Colbert was also all about spin. He was just trying to spin the other way. Somewhere in the middle lies people who are being honest. They can say they have an opinion, and they're going to actually say things that folks can walk away with and evaluate against that opinion without the opinion taking away from it. One of those people is not NPR, ABC, and studies about guns, it turns out. For some reason, there are some very polarizing topics out there. And whenever I see a headline, I already know that I'm about to get malinformation. It's probably not malinformation. If you guys remember, that was the big thing in the Biden administration. They always talked about it. Misinformation is accidentally wrong. Disinformation is intentionally wrong. It is made and put out there with the intent to deceive. That is most likely what we're seeing here. And then there's malinformation, which is correct, but it's inconvenient to a narrative. I don't think this is going to be that. This is a story that came out of NPR's health news, known as Shots. I don't know why it's called Shots, but it has a picture of like a vaccine thing because they went all in on all that. The article is entitled, "Guns Are the Leading Cause of Death of Kids and Teens and State Laws Matter." ABC also ran a story yesterday that said gun deaths among children surge after states loosen firearm laws, new study finds. They mistakenly do a causation versus correlation error. That's okay. States with permissive gun laws experienced a rise in pediatric deaths from firearms between 2011 and 2023. So that's a pretty good sized sample. In the states where there were stricter laws, they did not, according to a new study published in JAMA Pediatrics. That's the Journal of American Medicine, I think, which is already sort of leading us down a path. We know that the leading cause of death in children is firearm injuries, said an emergency room doctor and researcher at the University of Colorado, who was not involved in the study. In a policy brief from 2021, she and her colleagues found that a child or teen is killed in the United States every 2 hours and 48 minutes. It doesn't say from guns, but I assume that's what they're trying to imply here. This new study offers a window into ways to prevent these deaths, and she says that it's exciting. It's exciting because if we could just ban these tools that exist by the hundreds of millions in the United States, we could just stop this problem. They did actually evaluate this. Many of you in the chat are commenting that the issue has always been that they included up to 19 years old in the so-called pediatric deaths. According to this study, it actually is a little bit of a more accurate study in so much as they looked at children 17 years and under. So that is a little different. The researchers in this new study looked at firearm deaths of children 17 and under during the period after the landmark McDonald versus Chicago case, which happened in 2010 in the Supreme Court of the United States. The ruling that said state and local governments must comply with the Second Amendment. That's not really what it said, but that's okay. We'll do a whole thing on the Second Amendment with Stephen Stambalia in the near future so we can kind of talk this stuff out. There's some additional cases that are going on, pros and cons, fails and not fails, and so on. It led to states across the country changing their gun laws. That led to a flurry of activity in both directions, says a guy named Jeremy Faust, who is an emergency room medicine or emergency professor at Harvard Medical, and he works at the Mass General Brigham Hospital. He said you have states like Alabama or Louisiana and Texas that are enacting more aggressive laws in terms of freedom and access, freedom of carry, about concealed carry in churches, laws about stand your ground, and other things that make it easier to get a firearm quickly and to carry them. Yeah, but none of that has to do with children, it turns out. It's kind of interesting. And then there's states like California that pass stricter gun regulations, things like safety requirements, safety training requirements, where the people must have instituted background checks, waiting periods, make sure they don't have a violent criminal past. All of these things are written by people who don't know anything about buying a gun, which we continue to find. Again, they're doing two things. One, they're doing correlation, and they believe that's causation. And maybe more dangerously is you have people like physicians that sound like they've never owned a gun. They live in places that are sort of communist. And everything that you said about there should be more freedom of access, freedom to carry, it's actually not negotiable. The whole point of the Supreme Court decision is you don't get to negotiate with the government on whether or not you have a right. In fact, we have such a low threshold for fighting back when it comes to Second Amendment things. There should be no gun laws at all at the federal level, as far as I can tell. I don't understand why you would be able to implement them. Shall not be infringed. Infringed by whom? Infringed by the government. That would be Congress passing any laws. It's the same as the First Amendment. And I'm like basically a First Amendment absolutist as well. These are very plain spoken things. But isn't it interesting? Yesterday, we heard a little discussion about whether or not the states would be dealing with states' rights and how they want to defend states' rights only when it benefits them. I'm all for it. Let's call out hypocrisy. Let's do states' rights. And let's allow California to be as nutty as it chooses to be, and Massachusetts to be as communistic as it chooses to be. Tax people at whatever rate sounds good to them. Ban all the things necessary. And then let's have freedom in the other places. Let's see where people vote with their feet. This should be really straightforward. And by the way, we do have test cases in this. There's plenty of data that says the exact opposite of what this study says. But what they did is they narrowly cherry-picked a group of people, children under the age of 17, who already cannot buy a gun, with or without a background check, who cannot carry a gun in this country because they haven't reached the age of majority, and therefore we don't consider them to be full citizens who can take advantage of all the rights. You may be a citizen of the United States, but you don't have the ability to go do all the things that you might be able to do. We've set rules. You can't drink. You can't smoke. You can't possess pornography. You can't carry a gun. That's just it. They're supposed to be a nation of rules. And if we are a nation of rules, maybe we could live by it. That'd be kind of interesting. So maybe that's why this story is not terrible. Although I do think this is very performative. This just came out. There's some media outrage over at ABC. Representative LaMonica. God, what a name, huh? LaMonica McGiver. She was indicted by a federal grand jury over an incident at an ICE detention facility. Was this the first act of aggression that we saw in this Trump administration? And it was done by an elected representative from New Jersey. Is that the first sort of blow that set off all of these nationwide violent protests? Maybe so. Grand jury returned an indictment charging New Jersey Representative LaMonica McGiver. I cannot get over the name. Those are unnecessary syllables built into there. For allegedly assaulting law enforcement officers outside of an immigration detention facility last month. It did set up an interesting sort of situation where now our elected and public officials who are using what did Maxine Waters call it the other day? Congressional authority to go and try to do spot audits on executive functions where our law enforcement are enforcing our laws that members of the body that she represents passed under Title VIII. It's almost like they don't actually believe that the things they do. And this is the same party that cries about democracy left and right. The most democratic organization in the United States should be the U.S. Congress, one would think. That's what it is. Democracy in action is 435 people debating, negotiating, putting together all of their best ideas, hashing them out into massive, long-form, aggressive, written documents that make very little sense and include so many words that nobody can read them. And then they put those out, and they all vote on them, and then it goes on to another group of people, another 100 people, by the way, who are supposed to represent us not by population density, but just by overall state of location. And then those people put it on, and then a president who was also elected by popular vote, and the Electoral College gets to sign off on it, blah, 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 blah. You know, democracy in action. Title VIII. Can't do this. You also can't assault a federal officer, turns out. She was indicted. 3-count indictment. Charged the Congresswoman with forcibly impeding and interfering with federal law enforcement officers. This was charged by Alina Habba, who is the United States Attorney in New Jersey at the moment. She said, as I've stated in the past, it is my congressional obligation as the chief federal law enforcement officer of the District of New Jersey to ensure that our federal partners are protected while executing their duties. That seems pretty reasonable. While people are free to express their views for or against particular policies, they must not do so in a manner that endangers law enforcement and the community officers they serve. I think this leads into what's going on in Los Angeles. I think it leads to what is happening more broadly in this country when it comes to people losing their ever-loving minds. The other big thing that was pushed out there at the beginning of the Trump 2.0 term was this guy. And this article from CBS is absolutely hysterical. Kilmar Obrega Garcia, alleged human trafficker, alleged MS-13 gang member, alleged wife beater. I'm just saying all those things were alleged about him. Man who was deported to El Salvador, of a country which he is a native of, and was living illegally in the United States, or allegedly living illegally in the United States, I guess. He's, quote, defending bedrock constitutional principles for all of us, says his lawyer, who looks like a sad smash face cat. What are those cats called? Does anybody know in the chat? I'll go over to the chat. There's these cats. They look like a regular cat ran full speed into a door, and their entire face is smashed inward, and it's kind of like depressed looking. I'll watch the chat over here. But this guy with the mustache looks a lot like that. So that's the attorney. The lawyer says that the mistakenly deported man, we're going to still go with that, it's mistakenly deported, who was recently brought back to face charges in the United States. Again, fantastic PR win by the Trump administration on this one. That's a Bondi win. They said, well, if we're going to go back and deal with this guy and let him come back into the U.S., let's at least charge him and throw him in jail forever. That's pretty smart. Chris Newman is the guy who we're seeing on the thing, the smash face cat guy. Chris Newman, who represents the Abrego Garcia family, told CBS News' Major Garrett, another person that is just ridiculous, in an interview that he does not see the case as a referendum on immigration, but a potential turning point in the erosion of due process rights in the United States. We've covered it here pretty extensively, but due process does not explicitly mean that you get to go through the judicial system, that you get an Article 3 judge to look at your case. That's not what due process means. It just means that there is a process and that it was properly followed, that there's a policy and that there was no variation in said policy specifically due to you. I'll give you an example. Federal employees can be removed from their jobs. They don't have to go in front of a judge to adjudicate whether or not the thing they did constitutes a fireable offense or a suspendable termination. How do I know? I went through it. The due process doesn't have to be fair. There's nothing about it that says that it's going to be reasonable, that it's going to be balanced, that it's going to be that it's going to give multiple sides. They don't even say that you have a right to defend yourself during that due process. There just has to be due process. First, we notify you that you are going to be suspended. Then we are going to withdraw certain benefits or activities. Then, after an appropriate period of time and maybe an investigation, we are going to produce a findings report, even if it's one-sided. Then we're going to refer to said findings report to show that you had violations of policy or whatever, and you don't make a good employee anymore. You're no longer suitable for this position. And then lastly, we're going to engage in a termination and part ways. They can do that. That is due process. It's not fair process. There's nothing about fair process, even if that's what they meant. Due process doesn't mean that a judge gets to evaluate your case. So anyway, this is a fundamental misunderstanding, and it's going after low information people, which is the way that we do it. It's these people that are communists. Communists don't care about things that are honest or they don't. Sometimes they'll own themselves simply to just show you that we want to do what we want to do, and we're only interested in the power behind it. We're going to pivot over to something that happened in Minnesota a couple days ago that I want to show you. It happened on Monday, and I sat on it yesterday. I didn't have time to work it in, but it might be one of the most wild moments where somebody explained that they went through a certain process as they signed up for benefits and came to this country. And they completely violated the process. And now they're going to use it to show that the process is broken. And in doing so, have basically outed themselves. This is a Minnesota state representative who outed herself as an illegal alien, which means that not only is she not suitable to be serving in the role she's in, because she got there not by due process, not by the way that things are actually supposed to happen. She violated all these rules and potentially state law. But she also probably votes in the state, one would believe, that she's probably registered to vote in the state, and she is now admitted, while she's speaking on the floor, that she engaged in what I believe is felonious activity in Minnesota, as was described by one of her colleagues, maybe soon to be former colleagues. Pretty wild stuff. Again, if you only think that the message and you only think that moving the ball forward, this is what progressives do. They move the ball, they move things forward, sometimes to their own detriment. I'm going to show you a couple other examples of it as well, including a guy who's speaking at these immigration riots and or rallies, showing you that it's always the same. It's always about a communist/socialist narrative. And all of this is sitting in my head because I listened to my wife say something that I cannot shake, that there's no such thing as a happy communist. None of these people actually seem happy. They all seem miserable, kind of like smash face cat guy. All right, let's do something that is not miserable. Nobody wants to be scammed. If you don't want to be miserable from being scammed, maybe you want to check out my friends over at Patriot Protect. The website is patriot-protect/Kyle. 84 million passwords were leaks. Were yours in them, and are you the next target? A newly uncovered AT&T data breach exposed 184 million login credentials, complete with usernames, passwords, and email addresses. They were left unencrypted and open online. The data is already circulating around the dark web. Scammers are shopping around for their next victims. These aren't old logins from obscure sites. These are current access, and they include access to bank accounts. They include email providers, healthcare portals, government services. Criminals don't need to hack you. They can simply log in using your information. If your password was complete, even if you have nothing to hide, your digital identity may already be compromised. And once it's out there, it stays out there forever. So the only way you can protect yourself and make sure that scammers skip you is having someone remove this information from the web. That can include your name, your address, your phone number, passwords, and so on from these public search sites. There are data brokers that will sell them. There are data brokers that access them either for clicks or for subscription services. There's over 100 people search databases that Patriot Protect will help remove your personal information from. It does make it far less likely that scammers will target you through public sources. Also, their blackout service is scanning the dark web, looking further for additional information that could be actively sold, including your name. At least you know what is being exposed, so you can change those things. Criminals count on people being lazy, people being simple, people being easy to target. If you want to be one of the hard targets, go to somewhere like Patriot Protect. That's what we use here at the Seraphin household. It's patriot-protect.com/Kyle. You'll save 15% on an annual subscription. It costs you less than $10 a month. I think it's less than $8 a month on the annual. It's relatively inexpensive. It's one spilled cup of coffee from Starbucks away from keeping you out of that pile of next victim. So consider doing something like that. Again, link is in the show description, patriot-protect.com/Kyle. We're talking about money real quick. Let me just do this because I thought this was interesting yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to cover it. There's a story that Donald Trump came out, and he said that various different people who've had babies, who are going to have babies, I think starting at this year, I've actually got his clip, so I'll go pull that real quick. They have the opportunity to start a savings account. Like I said, I'll do one more quick little story here. They have an opportunity to do a savings account to put $1,000 away and basically let it grow for the life of your child, and you can actually add money into it. Other than the government having a vested interest in throwing money into it, which I'm not really crazy about, this seems like a pretty smart idea because most people in this country, a lot of their compromises come from financial situations. They don't understand how to do money. They don't understand how to work with money. They don't understand how money works for them. And so let me play Donald Trump talking about what this thing is. We'll just do a little quick clip on it. But basically, it's $1,000 that gets deposited in an account, and then they're going to peg it to a market index. And it allows kids to maybe grow up. This is kind of like a backdoor into universal basic income, isn't it? You guys tell me if this is not a conservative idea, only because the government money is going to get inside of it. I fear that this will be the same kind of problem that you'll end up having that you would have with Social Security, which is that the idea is good. Being able to grow tax deferred is good. Having the government's hand in it is almost always bad. You guys take a listen. Tell me what you think.
Here's how the accounts work. For every U.S. citizen born after December 31st, 2024, before January 1st, 2029, the federal government will make a one-time contribution of $1,000 into a tax-deferred account that will track the overall stock market. In other words, it'll be pegged to an index that we'll pick. Right, Michael? We'll pick it. We'll pick a good one. Maybe you should be the index. I'd like to have that. These kids would be very wealthy if that were the case. That would be a good idea. I think we might do that, Michael Dell. These accounts will be private property controlled by the child's guardians, and in many cases, those guardians will be the parents. We think probably the parents will be the guardians. They'll be open for additional private contributions each year from family, friends, parents, employers, churches, private foundations, and more. This is a pro-family initiative that will help millions of Americans harness the strength of our economy to lift up the next generation, and they'll really be getting a big jump on life, especially if we get a little bit lucky with some of the numbers and the economy's into the.
I'm sure it sounds good to people. If you're sitting in a house like mine, you got 4 kids, and you're like, oh, well, we could take care of our kids. We have this access to this account. The government's going to give me money. Whose money is the government going to give me? Oh, my money back? My own money? How about people that don't have any money? You're going to take my money and give it to them? Right? A lot of these things sound good on the surface, but imagine giving $1,000 to most people in this country. We've covered this extensively here. Most people don't know what to do with money when they have it. They don't handle it well when they do have it. They are almost all, like 50+% of the country is in a situation where $1,000 is a make or break point for them. That's not a good situation for people to be in, even though $1,000 is far less than what it used to be. So the government turning around and handing out free money, I don't like it. Again, it proves this point that I've made from the beginning, which is that Donald Trump is not a conservative. There's nothing conservative about saying we're going to redistribute dollars. It does look like we're trying to buy votes. It's a kind of a Democrat policy. Democrat from the 90s, like a lot of compassion involved. I like the idea that people can contribute to it. I just don't like where the funding's going to come from. And I definitely don't like the government pegging it to a specific index that we all have to now follow because the opportunities for corruption is too high. And the reason is because our elected officials continue to be people that are not worthy of our trust. We go back to that Minnesota House person. How many people are here under false pretense? How many people ran for office that lied to get in? We did a whole thing about Corey Mills with Steve Baker, and that sounds incredibly shady. More and more of you keep contacting me and telling me about problems with Corey Mills. I haven't substantiated it, but it sounds plausible, and a lot of that stuff sounds very shady. This lady says it out loud. It's one thing for someone else to say it. It's another thing for you to say it, that I am here illegally, and I have no right to be in the position I'm in. Again, this is from the Minnesota House floor. This is Monday, June the 9th.
Because his mother had died. My father, as the one processing the paperwork, put my grandmother down as his mother. And so I am illegal in this country. My parents are illegal here in this country.
What? She's here illegally, she says. That's Representative, I don't even know how to pronounce this name, Kaholi Vang Her. She's a representative of the of one of the districts near St. Paul. She had to go back and say that she is, in fact, a U.S. citizen, God forbid. But she tried to act like she has solidarity with all these people? Like they're just dishonest operators. Again, they're willing to say anything in the moment to try to get the way. They're willing to say anything that sounds like it will get sympathy from those around them. And then they'll turn around and then they'll eat their own words within a few days, acting like it's not. Again, I've got a story here that comes from the Minnesota, what is this called? Minnesota Reformer, where the headline is, "I am a citizen," she clarified after saying that she came to the United States illegally. "I am illegally in this country. My parents are illegal in this country," Her said on Monday. She was trying to inspire empathy from her Republican colleagues who are about to vote to take away state-funded health care for adults in Minnesota who don't have legal permanent status. In other words, they were talking about getting rid of things that, you don't have a right to have in this country because you don't pay into it because it's not your country. This seems like a no-brainer. Maine is doing the same thing, by the way. So this is not just Washington, D.C. This is not just the big government out there that wants to make huge sweeping policies. Your individual state reps, who are supposed to be the most accountable to you, you could probably go find your state rep in a grocery store near you. Like, they have little businesses and little shops. They don't make a ton of money. They're not sitting out there doing hundreds of millions of dollars of stock trades and doing the kind of Nancy Pelosi routine where they live in multiple mansions around the world. These people, generally speaking, are part of your community. And they're making terrible decisions based on empathy and bad ideas and potentially lies. This is one coming out of Maine. This is Representative Meyer from the 150th district in Maine, as I understand it, also a Democrat, talking about this sort of empathetic suffering thing. It's kind of the same attitude that Donald Trump has, that we should give people $1,000. How many people in this country are terrible with money, terrible parents? There are some, maybe a lot, who don't need $1,000 for their kid. They're going to find any way they can to screw their kid over with it. It's not going to work. They're going to drink it away. They're going to put it in their arm. They're going to use it to buy a stereo or something. They're just not, there's no way that this goes out really well. All it's going to end up doing is benefiting the wrong people. Here's a lady talking about we should all give money to people who didn't come here, didn't pay into our system, and don't have any skin in the game.
This bill would restrict both state and local funds from being issued as financial assistance to any person who is not a citizen of the United States. General assistance is a safety net that exists to prevent human suffering and to stabilize vulnerable individuals and families. The human beings receiving this assistance are legally present in the United States, including asylum seekers and others in the process of obtaining legal status. These individuals are not undocumented. They are following a legal process established under federal law. Penalizing municipalities for offering them shelter, food, medicine, or basic care is not only unjust, it is fundamentally un-American.
No. It's fundamentally Western to look out for the citizens of your country. What you're seeing on the screen right here is a picture. I just grabbed it in real time. You can look them up yourself. Type in "no work or recourse to public funds." It is the stamp that comes on your immigration, your visa, when you enter the United Kingdom. It was the same when I went there as a student back in 2002, I want to say, or maybe it was 2003. This is the stamp. You have no recourse to public funds, and you cannot work for money. I was legally present in the UK. But I had no right to use any of their public services, and my passport said as much. If I was going to use any of their medical facilities, I had to pay for it out of pocket. If I wanted to work, I had to do so for free. You can't come into a country and take their jobs. You can't take the funding that is paid for by the citizenry and distribute it to people that don't have any right to be there. This is not like a wild concept. But the idea that all people are entitled to all the things of other people, it's communism. That's what it looks like. That's what socialists always argue for. That's what these Marxists say. But none of them actually have this sort of real fundamental compassion about human beings. It always is about power. It's always about setting up a struggle. So you can listen. They use words like organize. When you hear the words organize, when you hear words like climate change and justice and democracy, and it's used in order to sort of justify taking things from you and give it to somebody else, you already know what that thing is. The action and the actual the mechanism that the system uses is the purpose of the system. In other words, a system is what it does. And if it confiscates from you, like your tax dollars, and gives to another person without your permission, redistributes, it's doing Marxist principles. This is a guy who's arguing in favor of the LA riots right now. He's arguing in favor of organization. Notice how he drops in casually things that have nothing to do with it, like climate justice and other BS. All of these people have no underlying principles. They're only interested in getting power, and they all think that if they could just be, if they, the virtuous types, could restructure all of our thoughts. Just like we heard the guy the other day who said, we've been here for thousands of years. Sure you have, dude. That's demonstrably false. Here's a guy who's wearing like a Palestinian scarf. He's wearing a beanie that was probably made in Chinese by slave labor. He's wearing American clothing, and he's talking on an iPhone that was also made overseas, probably by close to slave labor by his standards, going out and making this speech that we all have to organize and get together. Like I said, none of these people have principles, and maybe that's why we're seeing what's happening in California. Because it took place in California, it can now grow around the area. And of course, the mayor of California was actually trained by legitimate communists. Like, that's not up for debate. Anyway, here's this guy giving us the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, something like that. They always take these words and co-opt them and show things that don't actually have the same meaning.
Yes, hello, I'm Charlie Berg. I'm here with the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. And in Freedom Road, we have no illusions about the task ahead of us under a second Trump administration.
That's right.
It is up to all of us to unite the many in order to defeat the few.
Almost.
We need to make this country ungovernable. When he promises unprecedented waves of deportations, our job is to resist them. When he promises to drill and frack and burn more fossil fuels than ever before, or to incite war against China and Iran, or to unleash state terror upon our movements, our job is to take the fight to higher and more militant stages than ever before.
Okay, so they want to escalate, and they want to bring in fracking, which has nothing to do with anything. Foreign policy, which theoretically they would be against China because China does all kinds of awful things to people there. The workers there are oftentimes abused. No self-awareness whatsoever. And then we're going to escalate and make this problem more militant. You heard those words.
And his Republican ghouls want us to think that we're already beat and that there's nothing we can do. But I know that all of us who truly want to see a world of peace, justice, and equality are not outnumbered, we're just out-organized. And it doesn't have to stay that way. It can't stay that way. If you want to fight back against the Trump administration's attacks, the time is now to join one of the organizations you've heard from today, and to help build movements that can defeat the racist and reactionary ruling class.
Racist and reactionary ruling class. Again, it goes back to the same story here. We're just using buzzwords. We don't have to give you any truth. This is the same problem. The legacy media will 100% endorse these sort of ideas. They're going to give unlimited coverage to these people to say things that are false, that don't have any, like, there's no grounding in that. That guy literally was all over the map. If you were to take like a handful of darts and throw them at the communist dartboard, you'd hit all the pieces. Karen Bass. We're calling for an end to the raids, she says. Stop doing the thing that the federal government is charged to do under the democratic process and Title VIII enforcement authorities that were given to us by the people's representatives. Don't do those things. You know, because feelings. That's what she says. And what you're doing is you're fundamentally undermining the city of Los Angeles and its ability to do business. This is a lady who hates capitalism, from everything I can tell, trying to tell you that you're ruining businesses. There's something pretty rich about that. And of course, you'll contradict yourself in the next public appearance right after that. Let's start with number one.
You have a situation like we did in the last Trump administration where kids were afraid to go to school because they weren't sure their parents would be there, where people were afraid to go to work. And you just think about the disruption in families. You might have a father that's going into a warehouse or a plant. You might have a mother who is serving as a child care worker on the other side of town, either in somebody's home or not. You disrupt the entire ecosystem. You impact our overall economy. If people are afraid to go to work, this is a city of immigrants. If they're afraid to go to work, you are going to hit our economy in a way that is completely unnecessary. This is a problem that started on Friday morning when the raids happened. This did not need to take place.
Okay, we framed the problem. The problem is people are going to be scared to go to work because they might lose their jobs. Now, I was in Portland in 2020, and I've hammered that quite a bit because I'm seeing a lot of parallels there. The one thing I saw in Portland were people were absolutely terrified of the quote-unquote revolutionaries and the reactionaries and the resistance types that were out there spray painting graffiti and destroying and breaking windows and making it unsafe to go into their businesses. Do you think that might be a thing that you should worry about? That you've got a bunch of unhinged, lunatic, Marxist, anarchist, socialist, whatever, anti-capitalist types that are out there that are hearing what you're saying and thinking that they need to fight back? You wouldn't be defending those local businesses next, would you? She cares about businesses. We don't want to do immigration enforcement and get rid of people. God forbid.
Looting. Many businesses have now been affected by or vandalized. Last night, there were 23 businesses that were looted. And I think that if you drive through downtown LA, the graffiti is everywhere and has caused significant damages to businesses and a number of properties.
So you really don't want to have people destroying things. You might want law enforcement to stop them from ruining things. Maybe you could bring in, like, I don't know, a bunch of federal agents. Maybe you could bring in a National Guard, which your governor doesn't want to do. Maybe you could bring in a bunch of active duty Marines, because now we've gotten to the point where we're going to have to go and tap people out at 29 stumps. You got to be really cautious, though, because, you know, the communists will let you know. Sometimes people just want to do things for fun. What about the rights of the people to have a good time and burn cars? You never know that this is really violence aimed at businesses that's going to stop the United States and the, by extension, the tiny little fraction of Los Angeles' economy. It might just be people who are trying to enjoy themselves, you know, barbecuing vehicles.
Large group of people. It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation between officers and demonstrators.
Now, where would he get the idea that some people just want to have fun and let cars burn? Maybe from the leadership of the Democrat Party, maybe from people like Nancy Pelosi, who is going to refer to you. You have to be cautious and discerning, lest there be some exuberance of the moment. That's a thing that people have, exuberance in the moment, right? What is she drinking, and can we get some?
There is a gathering, a large gathering of people. The anarchists see it as an opportunity, and they move in. So always have to be careful whether you see a burned car or broken window or whatever it is. It may be the exuberance of the moment, but it may be the anarchist setting in. I heard one of the former police chiefs of Los Angeles speak about this on Sunday. Secondly, and you know this to be true, and I haven't seen it really reflected so much in the press, in a bipartisan way, on January 6th, with violence against the Constitution, against the Congress, and against the United States Capitol, we begged the President of the United States to send in the National Guard. He would not do it.
So it was, what's going on was actually about January 6th, apparently. Nancy might be, she might be time to swap out, don't you think? I think her battery needs to be changed. She doesn't know what's going on. Why do people stand around? Look at all those people standing behind her. They're all listening like, yeah, this lady has something to say. She's going to talk about this problem that's going on. She's going to make some sense of it. You got other elected reps saying that, it's not really the problem that there are people breaking things and destroying. It's really the problem that the National Guard has come in and we didn't ask for it. These are peaceful protests. I swear to God, they say a peaceful protest. If you're not watching this, there's a fiery, burning vehicle in the background.
We are having an administration that's targeting peaceful protests, people that are there to protest. The president is sending the National Guard because he doesn't like the scenes. He doesn't like the scenes of people peacefully protesting.
I don't think that's what's going on. I think regular people don't want to see their city torn up. And luckily, the governor of California, who seems to be making a bid for 2028, he wants to step in this moment of crisis and show that he's a man that can handle these problems. He loves the Marines, just not in his city. And so he's going to go and make a very heartfelt address to the California people and also the country, showing that this is what real leadership looks like. Here's Gavin Newsom totally not being a slimy, gross politician who just picked the most narrow window of people. I'm going to continue to have you consider the people that are involved in these violent actions, not the people that are stepping into the streets that are walking around. I think they're dumb, but that's fine. They're allowed to be dumb. You're allowed to have a bad opinion in America. What you're not allowed to do is destroy stuff that somebody else owns and violate law. And I think more and more, maybe Gavin Newsom either agrees with what they're doing or he just is too dumb to gather that this is not representative of where Americans feel. And it's because they missed that window with Biden. They had an opportunity to be honest operators and say, look, this guy doesn't have it. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to double down. We're going to just tell you the lie. We're going to present it like this is an organic uprising. And that's why I need to be outraged. And so are many Americans. What's funny is that even some of the programs in Los Angeles are starting to catch on and go, I don't think these people are from here. I don't think these people represent anybody that lives here because nobody wants to tear up their own place and then try to go to work and find out that their job is closed because all the windows are broken and the Apple store got looted. Here's Gavin Newsom being presidential-ish.
He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces. Not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength.
What right do you have to work or the recourse to public funds in the United States when you didn't come here and you don't have authorization to be here? The answer is none. And those dishwashers and seamstresses and people that are attending college and high school graduations that are getting American tax dollars to fund and benefit their lives, those people are actually stealing from you and from me. They're taking things from us that we paid for. And that's not an anti-immigrant stance. That's a factual stance. If you didn't pay for it because you're not from here and you have absolutely no right to be there, that job shouldn't even go to you. We have laws that say that you cannot do that. And if those companies are doing E-Verify and doing the best they can to make sure that folks are actually complying with the law, okay, then they violated the law and they have like false IDs and they're using them illegally. And if they didn't, then it means the company broke the law. Either way, laws are broken. We're talking about things. This is the whole Democrat premise was rule of law actually is supposed to matter. There was an ICE raid in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm sorry, not in Omaha, Nebraska. Yeah, Omaha, Nebraska. And it was like a food packing plant. This is the owner and the CEO who's on there. His name is Gary Roller, I want to say. Well, he'll say it in a second here. And they arrested 97 people. The thing that's most incredible about this interview that he's doing from his car as he's driving off is he said they E-Verified every single person that they hire, that he had no ability to stop them. And they're like, did you try to like protect your employees? He's like, well, get serious. This is the federal government doing federal enforcement. They have every reason to do so. And this guy was not setting out to violate law from what you can tell. That's why he's being really transparent. You wouldn't otherwise give this interview, I think. Listen, if you guys watch people who are deceptive and not, this guy is smart. He's savvy. He answers only the question given. There's no excuses. It's just like hone in on how specific he answers this. But again, that E-Verify system, if that's the thing that's supposed to keep people from illegally working in this country, if it's not working, and this is the first that many of us are hearing about it, isn't that the scandal?
And what's your name and what's your title there?
My name is Gary Rower, and I'm the CEO and the owner.
Okay, so do you know about this in advance?
Of course not. It's a raid.
How many people are being affected by this, do you know?
97.
97 people? Have you been told what's going to happen to them?
Nobody knows.
So did they let
They're being screened right now.
Did they let you go in and talk to anybody or be a part of it at all?
Yes.
So what did you have to do? Just stand there and watch what was happening?
Yes.
And what did they say about your company? Are you under any charges because you had alien?
Absolutely not, because we verified 100% of all the employees. We've done that since the company started.
Okay, and what's the exact name of the company?
Glen Valley Foods.
And you said you're the CEO?
Correct.
And could you spell your first and last name?
Okay, so he goes on to spell his name. I love this guy. This guy's awesome. First of all, unlike so many people that try to explain things away, he knows he didn't do anything wrong. He's already looking at the media as being sort of sympathetic and crying. We know what's going on there. They're saying that they're looking for him to say, like, I tried to defend my employees. And they're like, are you under investigation? He says, absolutely not. They go on and listen. I watched this whole thing. It's about a 5-minute little car interview. One of you just said he's lying in the chat. I don't think so. If he's lying, he's very good at it. That's exactly right. The man is just sitting there answering the questions that are asked. And then he goes and he says, why would I be able to go and take part in this? Why would I be able to stop anything? The lady goes, did you try to slow down these federal authorities? He's like, it's the federal government. What's wrong with you? Absolutely not. If you follow the rules and you do the E-Verify and the E-Verify doesn't work, you're not going to be culpable. You're not going to be liable for that. But what it does say is that these people probably had fake IDs. That's how you skip this. This is the same reason why we do Patriot Protect, by the way. People will buy access to your Social Security. Anybody who's ever run a credit check on themselves and found out that they were like earning income, do a Social Security check on yourself and find out where your income sources are. I found out that I had like people that were working under my Social Security number for a pizza place in Arizona that I've never lived near. I found this out when I was in my 20s. Sometimes you find out that folks will buy access to your ID and they'll work under it, knowing that it's contributing to your Social Security. They don't care. They're there to get a paycheck. They're there to scam the system. You'd think that that would matter, because think about who would take those jobs otherwise. And by the way, this is some of those folks. This is one of the guys that got arrested. There he is. He seems like a sweetheart, flicking off the camera. You're seeing him being marched out. Like, these are just people. I'm not saying that these are criminal masterminds. I'm saying that they bought an ID and they're illegally working in this country. Do you know who would have had those jobs otherwise? Either people who have low skills and need a job, who would have the opportunity to go get that job. There's an FBI agent. That's funny. New one, new body armor. Additionally, how about kids? You heard Gavin Newsome talk about seamstresses and dishwashers. These are jobs that are not supposed to necessarily feed a family. They exist so that, people of low skill can get a skill, can go out there and be able to learn how to be in the job market. We used to have teenagers do those things. Those jobs used to be worked by people like me when you were 15, 16 years old. I had kids that busted their ass when they were 15 and 16, washing dishes, and then they would learn how to be a waiter, and then they would learn some customer service skills, and then maybe they could become a manager, or maybe they'd go to another company and use their customer service skills to become a salesperson and make a bunch of money. There's a lot of reasons why taking jobs that are quote unquote they're too low paid for Americans, it just means that people can't live on them. That's fine. The way that you get life skills, the way that you become more marketable and move yourself up in the world is by going and working jobs that nobody wants for a while until you get to work a job that you do want to work. We used to actually have this understanding in this country, and it's a very Christian sort of value that plays out in society. Delayed gratification. In fact, most of Western civilization is built on delayed gratification, as far as I can tell. All agriculture is built on delayed gratification. You take your time, you invest up front, and then you harvest it later. If you don't want to do that, if you only want to be able to just like harvest what you didn't plant, if you want to go out there and just gather things, you'll never be able to have stability, and you'll never be able to build anything the way that our civilization looks like right now. It's obvious to me. Anyway, in addition to saying that it's really, really bad to put rules in place and to stop people from breaking the law, Gavin Newsom also has instituted a Los Angeles curfew, along with Mayor Bass. So these people who are calling Donald Trump an authoritarian have decided that, you know what, maybe we need to go ahead and take back some of our city. I think some of that's funny. I'm going to give you a little piece here. If you don't think that other people are seeing Gavin Newsom as an attempt, and this might actually sink him. I mean, he's got lots of political scandals in his background, but he continues to be elevated in California. Just remember, Kamala Harris was very successful in California politics. She was an attorney general and a senator before she was put into the vice president spot. Didn't play on the national stage. I don't think Gavin Newsom does either. But those people that were looking at Joe Biden and propping up that guy are going to try and prop up the next guy. So here you have Jake Tapper, go figure, trying to prop up, and maybe put it in the mind of the American people, I guess whoever watches CNN, Gavin Newsom could be the next guy.
Next political parfait layer, Newsom embracing his role as Trump antagonist in chief, perhaps as a precursor to a 2028 run for commander in chief. Because of this, Newsom is going seemingly beyond the typical political condemnations, out there seemingly egging Trump on in very strong fashion. Take a look.
After me, arrest me. Let's just get it over with.
They're just weakness masquerading as strength. They're cosplaying. If you want to be president, you might as well play the part as president. At least fake it. Do the right thing. Stand back, and we'll clean up your mess.
Governor Newsom's press office this afternoon even mocking Trump, reposting a TikTok that reads a Trump Truth Social post using the AI-generated voice of Star Wars villain Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, so the left can't meme. They can't be honest about this situation. This guy is actually on a local Fox affiliate in LA, and I think he's actually saying the quiet part out loud, that this does not represent the bulk of America. It doesn't even represent the bulk of California, and it probably doesn't even represent a majority of people in Los Angeles right now. Nobody wants to be interrupted on their way to work by people standing on the 101.
Those things occurred. What you're seeing is not spontaneous in any event. It's just not. And law enforcement on the ground, fully uniformed law enforcement, can't say that. And that's the unfortunate circumstance that we're seeing. This could have been stopped. It wasn't stopped because of politically motivated agendas. And at the end of the day,
I don't see why it can't be stopped right now. I mean, you got all these people out there, and we see what's happening, and every station's showing this happening, and they're smashing up rocks, and they're setting fires on the street, and yet everybody's allowed to just wander and do their thing. And yet, if our parking meter goes 2 minutes too long, there's a ticket right there. How does that happen? I mean, who are we protecting? What are our priorities right now as a society that this guy's allowed to hack the sidewalk, but you know, God forbid, I'm 2 minutes late on my parking meter?
You are so funny. This should be ended right now. And so I would look at the chief of police of Los Angeles, and I would look at the sheriff of LA County, and I would ask those two people those very serious questions, because this could be ended right now.
The point that's being brought up there, and what you guys are not seeing if you're just listening to us right now, is that there's a bunch of these like hoodlums all dressed in sort of like Antifa style clothing, right? And they brought a hammer with them to a protest, because whenever I think like, hey, I need to make my voice heard, I need to go down and hold a sign up and let my elected officials understand how unhappy I am with their actions, I always go ahead and grab like a rock hammer as well with a point on it so I can break pieces of the sidewalk off, just in case I want to throw pieces of concrete at them too. You see, it's not real. It's staged. It's made up. Made me think about this guy who talked about whether or not this was extremism, whether or not this was on the right or the left. Remember, we already went through this once. We had this guy to thank for not stopping it then.
When we hear officials say Antifa is the biggest threat on the left, are they being correct?
This is Bernie Thompson, by the way, J6 guy.
Well, we don't really think of threats in terms of left and right at the FBI. We're focused on the violence, not the ideology. Our domestic violent extremists include everything from racially motivated violent extremists
white supremacists,
which we've talked about here in this committee before. I think when I testified last year, for example, all the way to anti-government, anti-authority violent extremists, and that
also
includes people ranging from anarchist violent extremists,
people
who subscribe to Antifa or other ideologies, as well as militia types and those kinds of.
Right. Well, I
which
think
is a different kind
what
altogether.
I'm trying to reflect on is we hear from time to time that this organization, by name, we need to investigate. The secretary designee, if he was here, he would get asked this question, but he's not.
He would get asked.
He asked for an investigation of Antifa because they were the greatest threat to the homeland. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that it's really not organizations so much as it is ideology. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what I heard.
I appreciate that. We look at Antifa as more of an ideology or a movement than an organization. To be clear, we do have quite a number of properly predicated domestic terrorism investigations into violent anarchist extremists, any number of whom self-identify with the Antifa movement. And that
The only upside is that you'll never actually see them taken into custody, and they'll never actually have a criminal case against them because, of course, they only care about the right versus the left. Again, astroturfed. Here's one last little example, just since we're making them out here. This happened in Dallas. This happened, I think, on Sunday. This is a female representing herself as a member of the United States Army. She was a sergeant, I guess. She's no longer active duty, but she's wearing the full military uniform because that's what you do when you go and you represent all of people and then give a statement as an E5 enlisted, like you knew very much about what was going on at the upper level or the chain of command. This is the same military, by the way, that kicked people out for refusing a vaccine shot that violated their sincerely held beliefs. This lady is now going to tell you about standing in for the Constitution suddenly out of nowhere. Again, not actually in the military anymore, not representing anybody except herself, but trying to act like she's somehow representing a DOD policy or like the enlisted within the U.S. Army.
We are not pawns for Donald Trump's agenda. Why now? It's because the military was called upon innocent protesters. We, in our oath to serve, we serve the people of the United States. The Constitution, these constitutional rights are being stripped and just denied, and the military will not be pawns to that. So I'm calling upon the conscience of military members who served previously and now. We have a conscience, we have mind, and we have a duty and moral obligation to say no and resist evil.
We must resist evil. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. All right, you guys want to resist evil? You can support our program because we're going to just keep calling out things that are evil and that are inaccurate and that are false. Left, right, indifferent. I do have a fun palate cleanse. You definitely want to hear that because I think it underlies the logical fallacy that's been going on out there and why you would have riots in favor of some things. Follow us on Rumble. Follow us on YouTube. It's at Kyle Seraphin or Kyle Seraphin there. You can follow us at Locals. If you guys lose the stream ever, it's KyleSeraphin.com. You can get all the access to all of the articles that I reference every day. It doesn't cost you a penny to go do that, so go to check it out. And lastly, share the show with people. KyleSeraphinShow.com. If you want to send it over there, send them a link to any given show that you like. And some of you guys continue to write to me, so I really appreciate it. If you guys want to send us like a postcard, if you want to send us a letter because you're that kind of person, there's a P.O. box, and you can write to the show at 9073 West State Highway 29. It's Suite 110, Box 509, Liberty Hill, Texas, 78642. You can rewind and listen to it if you need it. I'm not going to repeat it real easily, but it is out there, and some of you choose to take advantage of it, and I get interesting things like books that people have written. I've gotten some challenge coins, so I appreciate that. If you guys want to send a challenge coin over here, I will maybe even put a whole display of the different law enforcement officers and military units that follow and watch our show because I appreciate all of you. Let's do something funny. God forbid, we need a little bit of humor in this world. How about ICE protests getting the sympathy of the American people? And this guy is quite funny. I enjoy his little take. I think his name might be Brian, but I actually don't know. I'll give credit when I can. The TikTok account is Reed Choi, C-H-O-I, or Choi. Here we go.
People are calling us criminals that are prone to violence and a tax burden to the American economy. I know, what an offensive stereotype that is just not true. We should riot. Assault police officers, government officials, National Guard, destroy public and private property, steal. I'm gonna stop you right there. Wait, so if people are deporting us because they think that we're violent criminals and ultimately tax burdens, and the way that we try to stop them thinking that is by being violent criminals and damaging public property that have to be paid by taxes or taxpayers, do you think that's wise? Do you think that's Do you think that's smart? I don't think that's smart. Ooh, okay, I'm seeing your point. Okay, how about this? What if we showed our love for America by constantly crapping on America and waving around a different country's flag? That will show them how much we want to be here. I don't know. If I invited someone to my house or they showed up uninvited and I still provided them with the living, but all they did was complain, I would think they're ungrateful and just tell them to leave and go back to where they came from.
Right?
I don't know. If I invited someone to my house or they showed up uninvited, but I still gave them a living, but they complained all the time, I would just call them ungrateful and tell them to go back to where they came.
I agree.
Bro, I ain't going back over there. Are you crazy? Dude, it's crap over there. It's crap. People are calling us criminals that are...
It's crap. Yeah, that's why you're here, swinging your Mexican flag that you bought on Amazon, because it's better here. Stop complaining. Again, I think a lot of this is astroturfed. I think that the people that are doing this violence are closer to bots on the internet who are trolls than real people. It's a very, very small number. And it could stop at any moment if California got serious about it. But instead, they're going to make Donald Trump do it, in which case, okay, fine. I think that you're going to find that Americans in general pretty much side on that. They want their kids to be able to have jobs. They want to be able to go out and not have to fund people that have no business being here. We're all for compassion, but don't steal from us and then tell us that we're the problem. All right, that's the thoughts for the day. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. We're in the middle of the week here. I assume it'll just continue to get hotter and weirder. I'm going to be on Alex Jones' show a little bit later today. So if you guys want to check that out halfway through the day, I think I'm going to be on at the 1 o'clock hour Central, which is 2 o'clock Eastern. I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. I don't know what we're going to get into. I'm sure Alex is going to be Alex, and we're going to talk about the Epstein files because he gets really riled up about that kind of stuff, even though, I think we're never going to get him. But check us out on InfoWars. Otherwise, we'll see you here again tomorrow at 0930 Eastern Time, 8:30 in Central Texas, America, for the Kyle Seraphin Show. God bless all of you. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.